Hello and welcome to another episode of the Visual VC. This podcast is your go-to resource for practical advice and insight on building, growing, and securing funding for your startup. Today we have a special guest, Ben Lang. Ben is a builder, an investor, a former founder, and a community guide. His impressive background includes serving a top intelligence unit in the Israeli military, being one of the first hunters on Product Hunt. Currently, he's the head of community at Notion, an active angel investor. With his wealth of experience and knowledge, you don't want to miss a single word from Ben on this episode. Let's get started. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for being here. So can you tell the audience a few words about you and what you do in life?
Yeah, sure. I currently am at Notion. I've been there for the past 4 years. I joined pretty early on. There were about 10-ish people. I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of really cool things, mostly related to like bottoms up growth and community building. How do we get the word out? How do we help people teach Notion, share Notion? And it's been a really amazing journey. We're now 500 people, 20 million plus people are using Notion. It's a really exciting company. And outside of that, I do a bunch of angel investing and very active on different platforms like Product Hunt and just overall kind of enjoy kind of being active and contributing to different communities that I'm a part of.
Amazing. By the way, I love Notion. You are the first one that really sold Notion to me, and I'm using it today. And actually, all within Power2, we're using Notion, and we're loving what we're seeing.
Great.
And it's first of all, a few words telling what is the experience of being with a startup with 15 people and growing to 500. I mean, anyone would just exciting journey. It's like within 4 years, right?
Yeah, and we also grew pretty slowly. Like we were always very intentional about hiring. I think a lot of similar companies now, could have been at 2,000, 3,000 people, but we were always very, very careful. And I think the founders kind of had a really smart approach about just being extremely thoughtful about like, why are we even hiring? Is this the right person? Rigorous interviews, rigorous reference checks. And, because company size is not really it's not really a metric. It's more like revenue and usage. And I think it's just been more interesting, more fun to see like how many people are actually using Notion now, right? Like I just meet so many people all the time who use Notion for like their personal life, their work life. It's wild like how much it's grown and the scale. And, they're now 20 plus million people using Notion, but like I could see a day when there are hundreds of millions of people using Notion, and like that to me is really exciting just to kind of have that kind of impact.
Wow. And so you mentioned hiring. Maybe you say a few words about what is a special, let's say, thing that makes Notion hiring unique that you noticed.
Oh, a lot of things. First of all, like the caliber of talent at Notion, I think has always been incredibly high. Even now, going back a couple years to when the company was tiny, like there was never a compromise of should we like bring in mediocre people or people who we think are good but we're not sure. It was always like, no, we're only going to bring in the most, the best people, best in class at what they do. And all the interview process, was designed around that, right? It was like really trying to understand, like, are they best in class at what they do? Reference checks, checking with people they worked with in the past, getting actual honest feedback, right? Like you don't want to talk to people who are going to tell you the same thing, like their best friend who's going to tell you the most obvious feedback, and you want people who aren't biased, and I think that's the only way to like make sure you really are bringing like excellent people, and even before that, just like being really rigorous about when you open up roles. Like it's not like a, oh yes, let's open up 5 more roles for this, right? Like it's being really thoughtful about like, okay, could this role kind of, be enough, or do we actually need more? I think really like kind of always taking a step back and thinking from first principles, like what is it you actually need, and who is the right person to do that. And I think that's a much more common thing to do now. Maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, it was like, no, we're just going to hire as many people as possible, and I think that's not the right that's not necessarily the right approach. I think a lot of companies are learning the hard way. It's been, I mean, I've been really thankful that we've always kind of taken that approach, and it's good to see like companies kind of thinking the same way now when possible.
Amazing. I'm saying that hiring the right people is an art form. You can't really go through, there is a methodology, but you first of all need to feel and have the right people to the right DNA, and that's really makes the company, the culture, and it's amazing. It's so many tips. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Now let's segue into the community building. Many of our listeners, they're probably in they're starting their startup, maybe they're early stage or early got some funding. What would you recommend for when is the best time to establish a community? Is it for any startup, any stage? Can you a little bit elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on like the company, the stage, the space. I think it means like community can mean something different for everyone. It's a very like kind of fluffy term that means a lot of different things. Um, the way I look at it is like, how do you how do you kind of build a platform that enables your users to kind of to connect with each other and kind of go beyond, just using the product, right? Like how can like that connection point between them help you kind of move forward as a company, and that could be like through top of funnel, it could be through retention, it could be uh, through education, right? Like there's so many different ways to approach that. But it's also like a very human, yeah, it's you're dealing with like humans, right? Like it's not just like, okay, are they going to pay for your product or not? It's like what beyond that? Like how excited and passionate are people about what you're doing? How much do they want to connect around that with other people? How much will that inspire them and bring them to the point where they're telling other people about what you're doing? And I think that's like a real it's such a different thing for every type of company. Like with Notion, it was very clear early on that there were like people that just loved the product and they wanted to like meet other people to talk about it and share how they were building Notion pages. And Notion was so broad from day one, so many different use cases, because Notion gives you like building blocks to create whatever it is you want. So there was just so much to talk about and share, and you could really kind of go down a rabbit hole and become a power user. And so that was what excited people, right? But like not
Yeah.
every product is like that. Some products are just very, verticalized and for one persona, and that could be a totally different story where maybe like that persona is underserved and no one gives them recognition and appreciation, and you could kind of be like the place to do that, and you could connect those people around that, and then kind of empower them, and have turn them into kind of evangelists for whatever it is you're doing. So long story short, there's so many ways to approach it, and I think it really is kind of like a case by case basis.
Wow. So can you list one very successful tactic you use in Notion that you say that brought me for sure? I mean, this is an amazing tactic that brought me so many new users.
Yeah, we so like very early on, we recognized like that there were some people that were kind of these outliers in terms of how passionate they were about what we were doing. They wanted to like basically be a part of like the Notion journey, right? Like they would do anything they want. They would write books about Notion. They would start YouTube channels about Notion. They would host events on Notion. And so we were like, this is great. There's a couple people doing this now. Let's bring them together and see like how do we go from 5 people doing this to like 200 people doing this. So that was kind of the start of like an ambassador program early on, and that's kind of proven to be really, really incredible for us. These folks, a lot of them started with like, small audiences, just like early in their careers. And now some of them have like YouTube channels with 50,000 subscribers where all they talk about is Notion, right? It's like they rode this wave and like their whole platform is on Notion. Or people who started newsletters and have like 20,000 subscribers or that are all about Notion, or have built their Twitter followings. Like there's someone in this program who went from 0 to 200,000 followers on Twitter, just tweeting about Notion. And now like is making I think about $30,000 a month from selling Notion templates. And it's like it's really cool to see that ecosystem evolve so much over time, and these people kind of start with this program and evolve into like these really big profiles. And obviously for us, it's just us empowering these people to go out and share Notion, teach Notion is tremendous value.
So basically, you find fans, early adapters, and really use their own platform to promote Notion. That's really kind of the bottom line, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is like the ambassador program is just people who volunteer, right? They just love what we're doing and they want to be a part of it. We also started not long after that, like an influencer marketing program where we would do kind of something similar, but for influencers on YouTube and TikTok. And that also kind of proved to be really interesting because we saw that these YouTubers and TikTokers were using Notion personally for like managing their YouTube channel or managing their life. And so we would kind of pay them a fee to go out and talk about that and talk, like share how they were using Notion in a really authentic way. And that kind of, proved to be really, it just, the conversions were so compelling there because of how authentic it was. Because when you see an influencer, someone you love, who has a big following, talking about something that they love, you're really, that's much more interesting than seeing like an ad on Facebook or a banner somewhere.
Yeah, exactly, because you cling to the story. It's like, there is a story that they tell about the product. So let's go. Imagine that you're a startup, you have very limited resources, and what would be the first steps into community building, and how much should I invest in that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it like first the product is really important. There are ways to kind of approach this without a product. Like I worked with a company a while back who they were pre-product and they were selling to IT managers, and they wanted like to understand how do we get in front of IT managers to talk about our product and like build the roadmap with them. And so it's hard, right? You don't want to like cold email every IT manager before you have a product, and then kind of they might not want to like talk to you again. So what we did was we built like a website where people could upvote their favorite products for IT managers. Mm-hmm. And then we told all the companies that we listed on there to share it with their audiences. A lot of them were already established. And then we also brought in we created like a board of like 6 influential IT managers to kind of help us curate this list of products. And it made splashes in like the IT manager, world. And then a lot of IT managers were happy to talk to us because this is before we had a product, right? So that was like a really interesting way to I think pre-product approach, like building a community, and we went beyond that. We started a newsletter. We would host like meetups for IT managers, and we became like this known as this company that would like give to IT managers before we had a product. I think after you have a product, I think a lot of it is just understanding. Well, first of all, people need to care about your product and what you're building. That's really important. Otherwise, it's going to be really, you're just going to be on like a treadmill going nowhere. But once people care and are excited and passionate, I think like figuring out, okay, how do we kind of go beyond that and provide value to these people as a group, as like a, focal point for whatever it is we're doing for the space we're in. And there's so many ways to do that. It could be like content. It could be helping them up level. Could be showing appreciation and recognition. Like all the ways that like you can create like a space and place to kind of help this group of people to to kind of build that like affinity and love for whatever it is you're doing. There's just like so many creative ways to approach that. And I think it's like it's very hard to like copy another company and just do exactly what they did. I don't think that's the approach. I think it's like
Sure.
there's no like one size fits all. I think it's really about finding what works. And what I always do, and like when I think about this, is just I just spend time talking to people, like who are the people who use my product the most, who are the most passionate about it, or who are like influential in the space, or who are who care a lot about this, like just talking to them and understanding like what are their core motivations, what interests them, what drives them, what are they looking for more of, what's missing. Like that's even when I joined Notion, that's what I did. I just spoke to people like that all day long on Zoom, just trying to understand like what all the answers to those questions, and based on that, building kind of different programs and opportunities through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so right. I mean, you shouldn't ignore a community building when if in the first steps. It should be part of your marketing strategy, marketing function. I mean, if you're a founder, you're doing everything yourself. At least that function of building community is really important. At least to get it through the product. Obviously, depends on the product, but it's must thing to do. Thank you, Brian. That's a great tips. Um, let's a little bit segue to investing. I mean, you're as an angel investor. Um, Tell me how did you get into the investment field? What brought you there?
Yeah, I had a friend who was very active as an investor and kind of looking for help. He was running a company and it, was obviously very busy and wanted some help with like sourcing and evaluating deals and just kind of managing the process. And so I just kind of did that for like a year and a half and maybe 2 years, and just learned a lot. And then over time realized like, hey, I could do this myself. Like, why not kind of join in? So it was a really helpful way to kind of get in and understand what's going on without losing too much money. And over time kind of became more active myself, and just really, I just find it really enjoyable, and just love kind of, being a part of like early stage companies in a tiny way, when possible.
It is exciting. I mean, I'm also very excited about the early stage companies. I myself mentoring startups, and it's really exciting to see some things built from zero. So, which industries or sectors are you most interested in investing in?
I, I mean, I'm very opportunistic. What I end up doing is just like finding incredible like friends who are incredibly talented and investing in them, or products I'm using myself like personally or at Notion, things that I'm using and I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. So that to me is like the best way to to find something, if it's something you're personally passionate about. So it's really, I think it's really about like the people early on. So just like finding good people. A lot of it is through recommendations, referrals from like other friends who invest. Mostly that. I end up doing a lot of like SaaS, some like fintech, some e-commerce, but it kind of a lot of it just kind of eventually merges into like things that I'm that are in my world, or things that I'm kind of aware of, which is fun.
So, what eventually makes you to invest in a startup or actually in a team? What are the parameters that you see that okay, I put my money on them?
Something I've seen like really at Notion has been like, how do you kind of figure out if like a founder really wants to work on this for the next like 10, 15 years. I think a lot of people don't. They want like they start something and they're just like after a couple of years like, oh, I'm sick of this, or I'm tired. And I get that. I mean, it's really hard. That like I went through it too, and it's a couple of years in, it's like it's a lot. There's not a lot of founders who survive like 10, 15 years longer. And I think like I think that those are the folks that like I'm really excited about finding, like people like who you can tell like this kind of feels like something they really want to do for the next 10 plus years of their life, or if it's just like, oh, they're just trying to raise a quick round and like, let it go from there. And I think it's like it's not too hard to like tell the difference. Mm-hmm. That's like I think that's like one of the main things. And then, I think also like just history of working together, like it's really hard to work with people every day. And I think, if you're like, if it's like your first day working together, like for a couple founders and, you had never done anything before together, like that's really hard. I don't know how people do that. So I think it's always good when like folks have worked together before and like have, a strong history together and are able to kind of go through the ups and downs. I think those are like the main things.
Mm-hmm. So basically team players and people with resilience that you can see that they're going to be there for the long run. That's a really good decision points.
Yeah.
So let's kind of let me ask you a little bit about yourself. Throughout your career at Notion and as an investor, what did you learn about yourself?
What did I learn about myself? That's a good question. I mean, I learned how important it is to work on things you care about. It's really hard to work on things that you're not passionate about and you don't care about. Like for me, I didn't necessarily think I was going to work at Notion. I just early on found it on Product Hunt. I became obsessed with the product and I was like, whoa, this is the future. This is like going to be deeply impactful software. And I built a website about it and started buying domain names about it, like with Notion, and just evangelizing it because I just thought like, dang, this is the future. And it's like, I think it's just really hard, like, especially if you're going to start something. I mean, that's a whole other world. I mean, I'm just talking about joining something even, but starting something, like, if it's not something you really, really care about, like that is, I mean, I think that's really, really critical. That's been like, yeah, it's been a big one for me.
What allows you to be successful?
I mean, I failed at a lot of things too. So I've had some things work, some things fail. I'm still figuring things out. I think everyone's still figuring things out constantly. I think, I mean, for me, like I love like just connecting people and, bringing people together in different ways. Like that's kind of what I've done with Notion in a lot of different kind of ways. And like outside of that, be it like Product Hunt or early on with On Deck, or, a bunch of other places. Like I think it's really fun to just connect people and like help people, through that way. And that's something I just really enjoy doing. And I think it's, for me, it's like all the opportunities in my life have kind of come through that, like, just kind of by being like, a connector, a builder, like creator, kind of, always like thinking like, how do I initiate? How do I build? How do I like connect and help kind of build things? Like so many opportunities in my life have come through that. And I don't think they would have otherwise. So
it's really down to doing what you love, and that makes the magic.
I think if you can, I know it's hard, especially like you need to pay the bills and like different constraints, and like I know it's hard, and there's so many reasons why like it's not always an option. But I think if you have the ability and whatever extra time you have, if you're trying to like make a change in your life or do something different, like use that time to really focus on something you really care about and kind of move towards that direction. And I think that's the best way to live life if possible.
100%. I'm really with you. Whatever you love it, you radiate that you're happy. Happiness, I think, the most important thing in doing whatever we do and enjoying it. That makes people to connect to us, that magnets other people to us and bring success. So let me ask you last question. Give me a fun fact about you and a book or a podcast that you can recommend your audience to listen.
I lived in three countries by the age of 3. Israel, France, and the US. A podcast. I really love the All In podcast with David Sachs, Chamath, Friedberg, and Jason. They're just like a couple of VCs who talk about like the venture industry, politics, the economy every week, and it's just so well done. I really enjoy listening to that one. Highly recommend it.
I love All In. I'm listening to them all the time, and you actually learn about the world from a different angle that you not necessarily hear it from the news. So that is brilliant.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of that over the news.
So this is really the end. A big thank you for Ben Lang for taking the time to share his knowledge with us. Until next time, keep working hard, and remember, it's not always about the destination, it's about the journey. Thank you for watching.